This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
For Tuesday, January 17th. To begin with, I'm calling the meeting to order. We'll go down the agenda. I will note that a couple of the Brighton Believer Awards that were to be given tonight, those folks are out and unavailable, so we will go past that and award those awards at a future meeting. To begin with, we always allow and encourage public participation. Is there anyone who would like to participate today? Tom? No? No, sir? Thank you. Okay. Seeing none. Next up, we have approval of the amended agenda. We've all had a chance to receive the agenda in the minutes. I'll first ask about the amended agenda. Any changes or edits or questions with regards to the agenda? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Karen.
Second.
Seconded by Sue. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of minutes from the January 3rd, 2023 education meeting. Again, we've had a chance to review those. Any changes, edits? Motion to approve the January 3rd minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Eleanor.
Second.
Seconded by Sue. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're going to start off with a budget review. It says Lou Alimo, but I see Kevin at the podium, so.
You're trying to hide your disappointment.
Right.
With the look on your face. It is Lou, largely Lou, but I am going to start out by just setting the table a little bit to talk to you about the process overall, and then Lou's going to jump in to the much more intelligent conversation. Our budget process revolves around our planning process, so our expenditures should be aligned to the work that we're doing in the district and what our priorities are. And this really now happens year-round, as we often remark, from the work we do over the summer to do that planning, to seeing how those plans work throughout the course of the year, assessing our needs. Identifying issues that come up throughout the year is an important part of that, designing plans to meet those needs, but looking at where we have the ability financially to do that. And the budget, the blueprint planning process really, right now, we're well in, of course, approaching the halfway point of the year, in seeing how things are working this year and all the plans that were laid out over the summer, and really understanding then what is it that we will be looking at for next year. So Lou's had conversations in all the buildings around staffing. We have enrollment numbers. He's got a lot of data and authentic material to share with you tonight. But it's really this overall concept of our budget process is not separate from any other process in the district. It doesn't happen in a silo where Lou rolls up his sleeves with one of those green visors and like just counts pennies and figures out, well, we just need to be in this place. His work, and where Lou, I think, is so incredible, is to figure out how to support the needs of kids, families, staff in the district by recognizing how that runs parallel, that process of budgeting runs parallel to the strategic planning process, and how we did the year before in implementing those plans and where we would need to revise and reevaluate. We think about the budget guidelines throughout this process too, and that's something that you set during a meeting, I believe it was in October, a board meeting here when we talked about each of these items. And I won't read them at you, they're really provided for people to have as a reference point, but a few of the highlights are really to think about the expiration of the federal stimulus funds and make sure that we're able to sustain programs over a period of time, and things that have been implemented that impact kids and families and our staff right now can continue to be budgeted for when those funds are no longer here. And then appropriate resources to support the priority areas, again, as we talked about before, but mentioned here: mental health and wellness, academic excellence, student and family experience, staff support and a collaborative culture, and safety and planning for the future. And then, as always, we want to look at our expenditures, make sure we're being efficient and effective, fair to our taxpayer, recognizing what we're supposed to be doing in terms of safeguarding people's resources and spending them well, spending them most effectively on kids, but to keep that spending as low as we possibly can also, while still having the impact that we're hoping for. That requires us also to think about compliance with the property tax cap, making sure that we're under that cap, and the long-term impact of the cap and all of the elements of the budget on our long-term planning. So I referenced before maintaining programs that were implemented as a result of federal funds that we've seen come in post-COVID. But thinking about our debt service over a period of time is important as well, and that'll be a big part of tonight's presentation too. What that structure looks like, where there's opportunities for reinvestment, and how that regular debt service impacts the overall budget. Process-wise, we've already, hit a number of these benchmarks in terms of when this happens. It wasn't October, I'm sorry, September 20th is the board meeting, when you set the budget priorities for next year. We have had a community forum in November that just really helps us sense what people are thinking, what might be on their mind. And then in January, the budget requests have been submitted, and the budget development enrollment projections, those pieces are presented to you at tonight's meeting. The preliminary budget, essentially revenues and expenditures. From there, the end of February meeting, we'll ask you to approve the tax cap levy limit. I think it's always interesting when we're asking you to quote unquote approve. It makes it sound to people as if you have a choice. You have to vote on it, but there's a formula that determines what the tax cap number will be. We will have a community budget forum in March on the 1st. We do a budget review then and an impact analysis of any potential additions or reductions. Mid-March, another community budget forum, and then the budget proposal on March 28th. On the 11th, we'd ask you for any feedback on that executive budget proposal, and then to approve that on that evening, along with the property tax report card. Of course, the annual budget hearing happens on the 9th with the vote on the 16th. So it kind of just lays out for you. What's not mentioned, I'll mention again at the end of the presentation, is we will, as we have a better sense for what is coming over the next month or so, we'll go out and be asking the community through a thought exchange about budget priorities and what people would like us to be thinking about as well, which has become an annual part of our process. So we just get a sense from the community about what is on their mind also. That's in terms of process and procedure. Lou's going to get into some more details with you, but I will say as Lou's coming up, the good news is the governor who has, because Governor Hochul is elected to her first full term, she has until later in the month than a governor typically does, an incumbent governor typically does, to release their budget. That said, although she hasn't released the budget proposal yet, she has indicated in her State of the State address and then since then in various spaces that we are going to see 100% full funding of the Foundation Aid formula, which is great. It had been a 60, 80, 100. This was due to be the 100 year. And they've actually supplemented with some additional funds as well. So what that means for Brighton, we don't know yet, but certainly that is positive news. There are other big challenges. That doesn't change what the challenges may be. And remember, we saw a lot of our costs go up too. So thank goodness we finally have full funding, but it's not the windfall that we may have hoped for years ago because of the commensurate increases in expenses. But Lou's going to tell you a lot more about that.
Good evening. So I'm going to start just with a big picture, looking at our budget analytically and the allocations for the Board of Education to get a sense of where the decision points are as we work through the budget development process. Certainly we have about almost 70% of our budget is salaries and benefits. We're a people business, that should be no surprise. And I disaggregate in the subsequent slides the decision points that we'll be looking at as an administrative team and then certainly how the board participates in that discussion. But certainly we look at salaries and wages, we look at all the supplies and services. The debt and capital is a relatively fixed cost. At the time where we present a capital project, we're generally locking in what our debt's going to be over the next several years. And then we have our BOCES expenditures. And again, I'll go through the course of this presentation, just disaggregating those and seeing where we have opportunities for efficiencies and where we have, most importantly, our mandates. I get that question a lot of how much of your budget is mandated. We have a lot of mandates in New York State, but there's not a mandate, let's say, to fully fund or fully staff a main office in one of our buildings. That has proven to be very consequential to not have and have open vacancies. So we made the hourly adjustment last year to try to recruit and retain more people. So I would say a lot of our budget is mandated based on the services that our community expects. So going through that, we look at the biggest salary line items, and certainly is our teacher salaries. We look at our clerical and non-instructional support, and certainly the things that are driving our teacher salaries. A lot of it is going to be enrollment. It's going to be truly mandated services in the special education area, occupational education, and different needs that we're responsive to each budget year. Going through, we look at custodial operations. We look at maintaining our buildings and what's the appropriate staffing level. Certainly administrative salaries. We look at some of the discretionary spending and extra duty and coaching. You see, over the last budget year, we have invested more in that, reestablishing our clubs, giving kids opportunities to connect to school. We look at substitute teaching costs. So all of these factors we're looking at. We're doing our budget to actual this year, and we start the 23-24 based on our current staffing levels, and then we roll forward based on obviously mandates first, and then blueprint priorities, and then other investments in our educational program. We've presented this slide before, but looking at the enrollment forecast, I've corrected this from a previous presentation, but just to maintain, generally the class sizes that are expected in our community requires a 3.0 FTE in general education teaching. So we look at the forecast and where that's coming through, so you see a rebound in our enrollment, and so that impacted our K-5 level with class sizes. It's going to impact our secondary schools with the electives, and then again, other emerging needs from our students. So that's a staffing impact, and what I neglected to mention on the previous slide is the transition or expiration rather of our federal funds and the programs that we've invested in with the use of those stimulus dollars. Those needs are not expected to diminish. It's going to require reinvestment. It's going to require a prudent transition from federal funds to our general fund. When we look at our health insurance, and a lot of this is tied to the decisions that we make on the personnel end. Certainly health insurance is tied to our FTEs, our full-time equivalents, and the staffing that we have. With that is also our payroll-related contributions to our retirement, TRS and ERS and payroll taxes. Workers' compensation is also tied. We pay a percentage of our payroll into our workers' comp. So all of these are generally negotiated items, but they're very much tied to FTE allocations. And when we look at growth and inflationary pressures, again, our health insurance is probably the biggest cost driver. Generally, we expect and we budget for 8.5% medical trend, but we also think of our post-retirement benefit costs that are contractual that continue to grow each year. Even though we have teachers or employees that may retire, create some breakage in salary, reducing our salary costs, those health insurance costs continue, and those continue to escalate each year. So that's something that we obviously monitor very, very closely. When we look at the BOCES allocations, again, special education is the primary driver with that. We'll look at mandates, we'll look at placements. That certainly Mrs. Spagnola's office pays very close attention to and participates in that. We have our core, really our operational services that we cooperatively participate in with our BOCES. So all of our management of our student management system, our financial management system, technology purchases and infrastructure is all included in the second large category. And then we have our general education programs, professional development, transportation, which is a mandated services, and that provides support to placements and out-of-district placements, special placements. Administrative fees is one area here. That's a fixed cost just for participating in the BOCES, so not much we can do to influence that, except state our expectations to the BOCES and trust that they're managing their inflationary costs as much as possible. And our occupational education cost is a growing cost, which is actually great. We've toured, and I think the Board of Education is going to get an opportunity to tour the EMCC. They've done a wonderful job there of developing programs, and kids, our students are participating in that, and there's high demand for that, and growing demand for that over the coming years. That does come with a tuition cost, though, that we need to plan for. And we look at some of our other supplies and services. That was a piece of the pie chart. Contract transportation is most significant cost within the area. You see this growth in this past budget. We are expecting inflation to continue. That's going to impact this. So we're looking at another 7% growth in contract transportation costs. Certainly our special education costs and out-of-district placements, related service costs for the private parochial schools that we support. Utilities is something we monitor really closely. We look at our consumption. We participate in a cooperative to bid our utility costs. And again, we try to manage that as much as possible. And you could see, again, kind of the magnitude of impact of different areas, some of which are fixed costs for the district, other which there's some discretionary spending that we look at every year when we do our department allocations. This is a slide that I've been showing really over these last couple of years and highlighting our opportunity for investment. We have Jason Swartz here today from Bernie Donegan, the president of the firm, is going to present and provide much more detail about this opportunity for capital investment, again with the goal of creating stability in our property tax levy. So we're not fluctuating. We have a stable percentage of our tax levy that's dedicated to the improvement and modernization and general repair of our facilities. So he'll speak to that in much greater detail. This is our tax cap, and you can see the factors that are included in that. This is our tax-based growth factor. Generally, Brighton's a mature community from a tax-based growth factor. This year, the rate is thousands, 14 thousandths of percent, so very nominal growth in our tax base. We do expect, because inflation is over the 2%, that it'll be capped at 2%. That goes down right here. And then the other big thing that drives our tax cap levy limit is the capital exclusions. And so we see a drop off this coming year from $1.8 million to $1.5 million. That is primarily related to the BOCES capital project. If you remember, a couple of years ago, we paid cash for that. The board prudently set aside funds to pay cash for that without having to issue debt. But BOCES had completed their capital project, and that creates a slight drop off in our capital exclusion. And then going forward, we really want to manage and prudently plan for this drop off right here, going from $1.5 million down to $647,000. That's our opportunity for investment in our capital, again, to keep that same percentage of the tax levy dedicated to our facilities. If we look at revenues and financing sources, obviously Brighton is very reliant on property tax dollars. And again, the superintendent mentioned that the board and we recommend that we are going to comply with the New York State tax cap. So that is essentially setting a pretty finite limit on the amount of new taxes that we can raise each year. When we look at foundation aid, and especially this year, we expect full funding, as Dr. McGowan said. We have to look at that at the out year, and that's an undesignated revenue source that will really need to be prudent about matching the increase in foundation aid in the future to our discretionary inflationary costs. Our reimbursable aids are just that, so our transportation costs, our building aid, high cost aids, textbook materials aid, things like that. We spend it, we get it the next year. So as we manage our spending, we'll manage the revenue coming in subsequent years. Sales tax is a great revenue source for us, and something we monitor trends, and we have been fortunate that's been going up each year. Some of the other areas of revenue is our charges for services. So with the number of private and parochial schools that we have in the district, we provide the special education services, and we bill those to other districts. So again, there's a cost associated with a lot of these charges for service. So it's not unrestricted revenue sources that are reducing the tax levy. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. McGowan to talk about next steps. And then I'll invite Jason up to give the capital project planning presentation.
Thanks, Luke. Great job, as always. So we will continue to monitor our budget to actual projections and really think about then going into next year, what assumptions should we apply to the preliminary budget. We'll take a look at the governor's proposed budget when it is provided, and then continue to work with building principals and department managers to look at where we can be more efficient. That's always an important part of our conversation. And look then at what the impact of any cost reduction strategies would be. We'll work on launching a thought exchange with the community on specific to the budget, and continue to advocate for full funding, but also for full funding to make sure that's going to happen. We're very confident in that, but additional areas where there might be an impact in funding as well. And as always, continue to ask the state for mandate relief.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Schwartz. As Lou said, I'm the president at Bernard Donegan Incorporated. We are the district's financial advisors. We've been helping you over the years with all of your many capital projects. And tonight we're here to talk about another opportunity for some future capital work. So, this is fantastic. I had a great setup tonight. We don't normally get just kind of teed up a softball like that from Dr. McGowan and Lou, but they've really kind of already set up the context of the conversation. So, on that key budget guidelines slide, if you notice those last two bullets that Dr. McGowan went over, talking about investing in your facilities to keep them up, to make them, good facilities that are conducive to learning. And then also managing the tax cap and how critical that is in this tax cap era in terms of being able to manage your budget. So that's really what we're talking about. And then Lou also went through, when the timing of that opportunity for investment in your facilities comes up in the near future. So then the report we're going to go through tonight really just kind of takes that and wraps it all together for you and kind of quantifies, what exactly that opportunity for investment in your facilities is. So just to start real quick, this is a summary page from a rather large document that we do for Lou and his team every year, really just projecting out all of your existing and future debt service for your current capital projects. So this is a really critical document for that tax cap planning. Essentially that right-hand column shaded in blue there is your net local share, or what's called the capital exclusion in the tax cap. And that basically reflects what piece of your capital needs the local taxpayers are picking up. And that's critical to manage because if we don't keep that nice and level, not only does it impact your budgeting, but it also can have a negative impact on your tax cap and your ability to raise new revenues. If you notice when Lou was going through his presentation, as he got further out in those tax cap projections, that last year the number was significantly lower because we don't have anything plugged in where this local share drops off. As we get, you see this highlighted in yellow that we have about an $875,000 drop in local share. And if we don't replace that, then we'll have a reduced tax cap number in that year that we can go out for. And this just kind of graphically shows the same information. So really that black line going across the page there, that's what's in your current budget. So that's really the level that we can maintain with no additional tax impact. That would just be maintaining status quo. So that gives us an opportunity when we have this drop off in 2026 to start looking at an opportunity for a new capital project to fill in that drop and be able to bring a lot of good work to the district without any additional taxes needed to fund that. Okay, one thing I know, common question we get when you're looking at new debt, especially the stuff that's rolling off, is how does our debt profile look right now? So just a couple of things that we thought would be helpful to go through before we start talking about the future capital project. We did recently get a credit rating at the district here. That was at AA2, which is a very good rating, I'd say above average for a New York State school district. That was May 26th of 2021 that you got that rating, so very fresh. One of the things that they did call out in that report, one of the key indicators was that your debt was below the AA median. So for all the local governments that are in that bucket of AA rating, as a comparison point, you have less debt outstanding than most of the other ones. So that's a good factor for you. And then also just a few quotes they had in the report there. Your fixed costs are manageable, inclusive of the district's issuance plans for future debt, and your building aid ratio at 77.3% helps keep that local share cost low. So, Moody's just kind of reaffirmed that you're in a pretty good position with your debt, your current situation, and future plans for the projects that you're still working on right now. And then one other thing we look at anytime we're talking about debt is you do have a constitutional debt limit. So we look at that. You can see as of right now, you're only exhausting about 22% of that. So nowhere really near that debt limit. You can go over the debt limit. You just need a supermajority vote, but we're not even anywhere near that here at Brighton CSD. So you're in good shape there as well. And then this is just a timeline showing, when we're talking about a drop off in 25-26, that seems like it's a ways off, but really we need to start that planning now because this is kind of the process of how long it takes. I'm sure you're very familiar with your current projects, the timeline of design for the architect, SED approval, bidding, doing construction. It doesn't happen the day after the vote. So this is just to show and illustrate, typically when we would expect that debt service to come on is when we get to the serial bond, the blue box there. So if we kind of work backwards, if we want debt on the books in 25-26 to keep our local share and exclusion up, then really the ideal time to vote is coming up this May with your budget vote would be a perfect time with kind of the timeline we normally expect for projects to be able to fill in that drop off. Okay, and then kind of one last big picture thing that we look at anytime we start talking about capital project planning, and as a relatively high aid ratio district, getting 77-78% on your approved capital projects, it's very important for us to look at the ability of those projects. So this just gives you a quick overview of where you currently stand each of your buildings has what we call its own individual aid ceiling, so that's the amount of work we can do with that building and get aid on it. So we want to make sure that we stay with that to the maximum extent that we possibly can. And overall, right now, you're in very good shape. You see all the green numbers here that show you how much construction and incidental work you can do. So there's plenty of room for some additional capital work to come on and still be able to get aid on that work. So kind of setting the stage there, all that background information, we worked with Lou and his team to start to look at, what does this look like in terms of possible work that we can do to fill in that drop-off. A lot of information on this page. I don't think we really need to hit on too much of it, but just on the top there, again, like we said, your building aid ratio is 78%, so that's why we bundle these projects up and do a voter-approved capital project instead of just doing them through our annual budget, because if we can get that 70% aid, that goes a long way to helping offset the cost for the local taxpayers. And then the second set of colored boxes there, we'll get into a minute, but we ran a couple different scenarios just to give you some options. One with no capital reserve, one with $1 million of capital reserve, and one with $4 million of capital reserve. So those are just some of the variables we're looking at here. So when we run those different scenarios on this page, basically you can see, and we'll show how it all fits together in a minute here, but scenario one, if we wanted to just do the maximum work with no capital reserve contributed, we could do a $28 million project. And that would be about $25 million of construction incidental work and then some financial contingencies we set aside in the budget to protect you from rising interest rates or delays in building aid. So that's kind of our base scenario that we could look at. And then the other scenarios, if we added $1 million of capital reserve, we could get up to about $31.4 million of capital work that we could do for no additional tax increase. Or with $4 million of capital reserve, we get up to about $41.8 million, just under $41.8 million of capital work with no tax impact. So that's kind of a range of options to be considered as you start to plan and prioritize scope options. And one other thing that I think is important to mention is you don't necessarily have to do this all in the May vote. We do have flexibility with how we structure the debt, that if there were some key priorities that you wanted to jump on right in May, but you wanted to have a little bit more discussion in terms of prioritizing your full scope of needs, this could be broken up into a May vote and then something in December of 23 or the following May to come to the total package. But this is kind of if you wanted to go out in May of 23 for these amounts, that is a possibility as well, that you can do it kind of all at once or in some smaller chunks as well if you'd like. Okay, so then I'll really just run through kind of the first scenario at a high level, and then we can kind of breeze through the last two since they kind of all work the same. But so this is how the maturity schedule would look. So again, in that upper left-hand corner where the box is shaded there, this first scenario, we're assuming no cash contribution from the district, just bonding the full $28 million. So you see in column C, we show the payback of that $28 million over 15 years, and we purposely show that over 15 years so it matches our building aid, so we get a nice smooth local share. We don't want any spikes or mismatches there. So really when you look on the far right hand side here, after taking in the middle of the page the debt service about $2.8 million, we get about 1.9, almost $2 million of the building aid back. So that local share on the far right hand side for this project is about $875,000 a year. And if that number looks familiar, kind of calling back to the beginning of the report, that's because that fits right into that drop off. So we've sized the $28 million project, gives you a project that slides in to what's retiring out of your current debt with no additional tax impact. So we just keep that local share nice and smooth, which is good for your budgeting practices and good for Lou in the tax cap calculation, that he can kind of keep that stable 2 to 3% per year, hopefully. So again, when we put it all together and look at the whole picture, go back to this bar chart, so you can really kind of see it for the visual learners in the group. We stay right at that current level all the way through, no additional tax impact, which is always a nice selling point to be able to do that much work for your facilities and not have to ask the taxpayers to pick up any extra burden. So then again, same kind of idea with the second and third scenario. Now we're adding $1 million of reserve, so we can do the higher project even with the $30 million of bonding versus $28 million. Because it generates some additional building aid, we can stay at that same level. So when we put it all together, we still stay at that 1.2 million overall, and we stay below the bar there. And then again, with a $4 million contributed, we do have more debt service in this scenario, but we generate more building aid again, so we stay at that nice level that we're trying to target on the right-hand side there, and stay right under the bars all the way through. So I know I kind of went through a lot of information really quickly there. If there's any further questions or anything I wasn't clear on, I'd be happy to go through more, or we've already kind of shotgunned a lot of financial
No, I
information.
appreciate it.
we
Thank you
totally
very much.
understand.
The one thing I wanted to add, the reason I asked Jason to do the third scenario with the $4 million is because we do expect the sale in the Brookside building, you know, in the coming months. So opportunity for investment of those funds of that magnitude. So that type of site work, if we were to invest that in, you know, the parking lot, for instance, at the high school, or the investment in our athletic fields, you know, a community asset, we would need to start the environmental review process pretty quickly. So to do a project of the magnitude up to the $41 million, we really need to start talking about that now. And any of the site work, we would need to start having those environmental impact analysis, working with our attorneys and our architects and site engineers. So that's the reason I specifically asked them to show kind of that $4 million project. And again, for the board's consideration as we plan in these coming months. So any questions for Jason?
Just a couple of quick comments. First, greatly appreciate Lou, and it's sort of verified by what Jason talked about, the work you, Dahlia, and your whole team do in terms of managing debt, moving resources around. Kevin always says, you know, the budget reflects our priorities. That's capital budget and the normal, if you will, expense budget. So really great work on all your part. That's an outstanding rating, as Jason pointed out, for a debt rating, and that helps us control costs in itself to get us better interest rates. Both of you also said in your discussions, many people might appreciate, but some might not, that the time you go, okay, we're gonna fix up this asset with this particular project, which then requires architects and seeker reviews and legal sort of wrangling. Then it's gotta go to SED for review, where it could come back with questions that have to be answered, then cycle forward. So projects we think about doing in 2024, 2025 need to get going now so that we can do some of that stuff. And it sounds a little bit ludicrous, but it's really not. There continues to be a shortage in the trades and some of the supply chain issues we face from time to time. So a lot of stuff going on there. Appreciate also the work you and the buildings folks that are in there. We also know that you and the buildings folks are meeting with all the principals to make sure we understand the priorities. Last thing that I will shout out is, there's a whole lot of things that people see in the community, particularly in the high school and the middle school, which have community resources. People use those fields not. We talk a lot about what's in front of the wall, the things you see all the time, and then the things you don't, which is like new boilers, right? New water coolers, new cooling stations rather, a new roof at TCMS, which you see people working up there, but you don't see it. But we no longer have water dripping through the ceilings, right? So a lot of work you guys are figuring out how to prioritize and get done. That's greatly appreciated, and the community will maybe see half of it, because so much of it's behind the wall, saving us money on energy and doing some of those other things. So none of that was a question. It was just a statement of appreciation. Appreciate your time tonight, Jason. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And Lou. So I'll turn it over to the rest of the board to see if you all have any questions, thoughts, or anything else. It's a lot there, and we're going to talk about it a lot for the next few months, so it'll be great.
I appreciate the clarity, though, of the three scenarios drawn out really well. I think it makes it really easy for, you know, non-financial experts to understand, so I appreciate it.
We're all set. If you're all set, Dr.
Well, good. Thanks to both of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now go to reports. It seems like it's been a long time since we last did reports. First up is the financial reports. We've all had a chance to review the four of them. I will list them out loud. The executive summary, which includes the budget status report for the period ending November 30th, 2022, the treasurer's report for the period ending also November 30th, 2022, the school district single audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2022, and finally, approval for the financial report, extra classroom activity funds, and single audit report for the year ending June 30th, 2022. While Lou is here, any questions from any of you on any of those reports? You've obviously had the chance to receive them and look at them.
No.
Seeing none, motion to approve the reports as provided.
So moved?
Moved by Susan,
Second.
seconded by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Our student representative, Eliza Gahouse, is not able to be here because she's got some tests tomorrow. So appropriately, she's home studying. but she did leave us a write-up. We will post that to ask Kim to post it to the site, but I will see if Christina can read a couple of those notes,
Sure.
please.
Okay, so.
Act like a student.
Well, they're so more sophisticated than I am, so. Today is the swim team senior night, where the swim team will be recognizing the seniors on the team. We also want to give a shout out to the indoor track team, who has already set 3 new school records.
Wow.
In club news, the Brighton Model UN just went to the CYN Model UN conference in Syracuse and had several amazing delegates who should be recognized for bringing home awards. This includes Kelly McDermott, Sam Martin, Annie Gual, Gurang Ketan, Anna Bansal, and David Lusignan. Key Club has done many service activities this year, including writing letters and making cards for the Brightonians, making beads of courage, and many other volunteering activities. With that being said, the service year is ending and elections for new student officers will be taking place February 1st. In Student Council news, Executive Council is having their first ever annual winter formal next Friday. It will be a lot of fun with dancing, food, and music. Student council members will start selling tickets before school, during flex, and after school this Thursday. And in education news, the first semester is approaching its end. Students are going during flexes and free periods to make up missed assignments and tests, along with studying for midterms that teachers have scheduled during class. Through all this chaos, we have been informed by Dr. Hall that there is a new epidemic in the country this past year, with many overdoses for fentanyl use among adolescents in our community, and the student body wants to urge everyone that we should never take any pills found online that are not prescribed by our doctors.
That's great
And that's
advice for
the
everyone,
end.
not
Yes.
just students.
Agreed.
Dr.
Agreed.
Gasparino will agree, I suspect. Next up, Board of Education reports. First, the Monroe County School Board Association reports. First up here is Labor Relations. I'm on that. That's actually scheduled for tomorrow, and I will be attending. That's contract negotiations in a high inflation time. So I will report on that at the next meeting. Information exchange.
So that is me as a standing member, and Christina actually went along, as did Esther, this past January 11th, because I want to read to you what the title was. So the title was Effective Advocacy, and we and the other members got to practice our advocacy etiquette with our legislators and maximize our impact at the Monroe County School Boards Association legislative breakfast, which is coming up. And so local superintendents sort of got into character and pretended to be senators and other members of legislation. And we had an opportunity to go through talking points and practice advocating for, as a Monroe County School Board Association, advocating for issues important to all of us. And that's in preparation for our February 4th legislative breakfast that I know I'm planning to attend, and I believe Christina is as well. But it was really a lot of fun, and I learned an awful lot, so it was great.
First time they've ever done it. to my
First time they did it,
recollection.
and it was very interactive, which is the first time they've done it, so it was an hour and a half long, and it was really useful, so I really liked it.
That's great.
Good. Great to hear. Legislative.
Christina and I both attended on Wednesday, January 4th, and we talked about preparing for the legislative breakfast, so thanks for that lead-in. This will be, I think, the first time I have not been able to attend. I'll be at Teddy's Parents Weekend in Florida, but everyone...
Oh, shucks.
Right?
Darn.
Everyone on the board should have an email from Nancy Pickering dated Monday, January 9th, with an invitation to register for the breakfast. And especially if you haven't been before, I strongly suggest you go. It's a really interesting presentation. It's always great to have FaceTime. I know we're making a big push to have people be there in person. So there we go.
Okay. I will quickly note, I find it here, BOCES report. Mark Kokanovich is our BOCES rep. I'm going to find it here. It is right here. This is for January. The Monroe One BOCES recently received a presentation on the Eastern Monroe Career Center, the EMCC, for onboarding and professional development for our new teachers coming into our career and technical education programs, excuse me. Those joining us as educators in the CTE area rarely enter with formal teaching experience. Monroe One BOCES EMCC has developed a program for new educator orientation and onboarding that takes place in the summer prior to the start of the CTE classes. They also passed a budget, a couple of budgets with regard covering special education, EMCC, and multi-occupational, and I've got a flashing thing that tells me I need to reboot, so
Yeah,
I'm trying
mine
to read
too.
around that,
Mhm.
I apologize.
Mine too.
Mark also pointed out, and I've mentioned this before, it'd be an ideal time for the Brighton board to make arrangements to visit the Monroe One BOCES this spring, and I'll work with Kim to send us some dates. It will be difficult. Likely not everyone will be able to do it at the same time because we've all got such different schedules, but we'll do our best to see if we can schedule it. It's easiest to do it during the week between 8 and 5 when students are there. So I'll work with Kim on that and send out some possible dates. That was BOCES. Other board member reports. I'll start with Eleanor and just sort of work that this way, if that's okay.
I don't have any other reports, too.
Okay. Karen?
I think every committee I'm a part of has met the past 2 weeks. So, starting with the response to intervention, academic intervention services review, we met last week and began drafting what I think is a really phenomenal document outlining our multi-tiered systems of support that can be used by many members of our community, in-house and parents, and I just think it will be a tremendous help for folks to really grasp the work that's being done and how we approach it. I told you about legislative committee. I met with PTSA last week as a board rep, and just, you know, I'm biased about the PTSA because that's where I come from. That's my journey here. Just outlining the tremendous amount of work they do in the arena of family engagement, helping parents and kids feel connected to our buildings and to our staff, and just kudos to them for everything they're doing every day. And then I also met with the school-based equity team at TCMS, who are moving ahead to formalize their norms for their work for all the work in the district, in the building that they do, norms for meeting and the language that we use. So I did miss curriculum council.
I have no further reports.
Okay.
I don't have any reports, but it's that time of year. You're going to get tired of hearing me say this. Say Yes to the Dress is Thursday, February 16th. If you have any kind of prom attire, dresses, tuxedos, bow ties, shirts, shoes, handbags, jewelry, or even men's suits, suit jackets in particular were a big hit last year. I know there's a collection box in central office, and I believe there's one in the high school. And you can also drop stuff off at Brookside School between 9 and 12, Monday through Friday. There's a red bin outside, and we're very excited and looking forward to. We've lost track, I think at least on 8 years, but we've lost track. Yeah.
Has anybody
That's my
actually ever
report.
requested a bow tie?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. People sitting at this table.
It's a shot.
Okay.
Darn right they
They are
have.
in.
Christina, thank you
Okay.
for that, Jolene.
I'm thinking of all the things that I'm going to donate to the dresses. My kids are cleaning out their unused, beautiful dresses.
Men's too.
Men's too, okay.
Yes, please.
So the New York State School Board Association met the DEI committee, and we had some professional development around the state education culturally responsive sustaining education framework. And we talked about how New York State school boards can support that work. And we're also thinking of other ways that the New York State School Board Association can develop professional development around some of the state ed outcomes, and so that we can understand as school boards have an alignment with the work that is being done. And then today the Teacher Centers Policy Board met, and we voted on an amendment to the budget to continue supporting professional development for our teachers. And also we did some brainstorming about how we can support new teachers at the building level, the schools level, and the district level. And so that was a great exercise for everyone to see the ways in which we can support new teachers. That's it.
Thank you. Esther Winter was called to work tonight at 7, but I've got 2 quick updates from her. First, she attended Curriculum Council on January 11th, continuing review of the student feedback from the Panorama Survey this past spring, and started revisions on the profile of a graduate. What attributes do we want our students to leave our school with? Based on feedback from the Panorama Survey, as well as results from additional data received from additional questions given to the students. There was a fair amount of discussion by the looks of it, and the attribute words that were chosen at this point these are excellent. Resilient, joyful, empathetic, curious, critical thinker, advocate. It's a really great list of words. And they'll continue to revise the profile of a graduate in upcoming meetings. Esther also attended the school-based equity team for BHS this past Thursday, also working off Panorama surveys and focusing on future questions to concentrate on a sense of belonging for the students. The meeting she did miss was the first suspension disproportionality meeting, and that was held, I believe, today. She's got a very hectic work schedule right now, but she'll update at the next meeting in regards to that one. You heard most of mine. We're doing construction meetings every other Monday to start to think about projects and timing and things like that. I'll always say this, the buildings team that we have here does a remarkable job of dealing with the brush fires that happen on any given day, and also doing strategic and long-term thinking for projects. They are absolutely an invaluable resource for students, for families, and for the community. They're just outstanding in their roles. Nicole, BTA.
Awesome. Thank you for letting me share some of the great things that are happening in the schools. If you go to the Council Rock page, you'll start off by seeing some great artwork that was done. I'm partial to the Bills logo. Go Bills.
As we are.
So Council Rock second graders who were part of the community cluster group raised $1,400 for Bell's Bud Rescue. So they designed artwork using their handprints and then made note cards. Bell's Bud Rescue is a dog rescue, and one of our teachers, Michelle Sayre, is a volunteer adoption coordinator for them. So it was just a tremendous, I know it brought her to tears when she found out how much they were able to raise. And of course, our habits of mind were in use, thinking flexibly, striving for accuracy, and thinking about our thinking. Mrs. Pappas's second grade made a class book on Book Creator, and if you click on the bear, it should give you the link for the book.
It's adorable.
It is. So they used the collaboration feature on Book Creator. They researched using Epic and wrote facts in their Book Creator and then chose their images. So really nice work.
That's awesome.
Sorry, we'll move on to FRES. So at FRES, they welcomed the Israeli delegation from the Jewish Federation's Partnership Together Teacher Exchange. So those are the teachers coming from Modi'in. And they were greeted by a performance by the FRES Chamber Ensemble, conducted by Lori Isham. And then Lonnie Mazurowski's fifth grade class shared reasons they loved FRES, and then they were able to take a tour of the building. They also were able to go into Lonnie's class and talk about, they played a bingo game. So one of the teachers, Mayan Bar Yehuda, is a PE teacher, and she's been connected with Janice Mix. And she got to see her teach, she got to see Janice teach her lesson, which was great. But they played a bingo game, and if you didn't, the school that Mayan works at in Modi'in, they focus on the mind-body connection. So one of the things that they did was if they didn't have a certain square, they had to get up and do 10 jumping jacks. So it was a lot of fun. You can see some enthusiastic jumping there, kind of enthusiastic. Extended studies at FRES was wrapped up. The first unit was wrapped up. They researched, third grade researched careers they were interested in. Fourth grade completed projects using videos and symbols that taught about their own lives. And then 5th grade students research climate change and how community members can help that. So here's some great photographs of the 3rd and 4th grade posters. They're just really amazing, really amazing. I'd like to go see them in person, but really great stuff. So I try, every picture I get, I try and include, just so you know. Then you have some readers from early morning reading coming in before school to do some work, so you can see some sleepy, cozy pictures. A lot of kids with their coats on. Wishing they were still in bed, I'm sure. Frez Blue Band had their first concert, and the Frez Clarinets were on the road to play for the Rotary Club's holiday party. Rehearsals started back up, and they are working on jazz music to play at the Brighton Pizza and Jazz Night, which I'm not sure when that is, but it says it's later in January. On to 12 Corners. English 8 students have been selecting art, and they are doing a creative or analytical piece of writing based on their artwork. They are connecting to the reading of the book Okay for Now by Gary Schmidt. The main character cultivates resilience through learning about John James Audubon's art. So, nice model. There's also in the staff lounge a life-size coloring page. They invited all of you to come over and color a flower if you would like to. Music department will be hosting the junior high solo festival this weekend. 400 students from all over the county will be coming to try out for All County Festival. They wanted to make sure to thank the custodial staff who does a tremendous job setting up and prepping and cleaning up. Lots of yummy gingerbread in Frau Walter's 7th grade German class. So they learned about the origins of gingerbread along with reading the stories of the Brothers Grimm. They read Hansel and Gretel in German, and 80 students and teachers came and visited to vote on their favorite house. The winning house, which is quite extraordinary, is there. And then we have lots of creating. They all look really good, actually. And then students in Mrs. Katsatos' 6th grade social studies class had Mrs. Kugel, who's our technology specialist, 612, helped them do a virtual tour of ancient Egypt. They went to the Nile River, the pyramids, Great Sphinx, and inside a tomb. So pretty cool. In the high school, BHS took 55 students to compete in a DECA competition at RIT. They competed in 32 events, individually and teams, and 6 individuals or teams won trophies. So you can see those listed there. And last, Poetry Out Loud, there are 2 students who are going to compete in the semifinals, Tessa Miller and Nick Gray, and they'll be competing in the semifinals at Buffalo State in February. They'll recite 3 poems for a panel of judges, and then winners from that will compete at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's so much on these
A lot.
reports, and I appreciate the pictures, because I do think they tell a lot about what's going on, so thank you.
Yeah, you see the joy.
Yeah.
And
So-
pizza, I have to put in the plug for the Pizza and Jazz
Oh,
is
awesome.
Tuesday, January 24th at
Yep.
6, and pizza is $1 a slice. Yes,
good
my
deal.
trumpet player is very excited about the pizza, $1 a slice.
It's a steal, really.
It is,
It
it's
is.
quite
And the
good.
music is so good.
I
Yes.
know, I mean, there's that as
And
well.
where-
He's excited about that
But
too.
the
free?
pizza.
Where is it?
It's at Fred's.
Yeah.
10 cent wings now.
At Fred's,
Oh,
6
yeah.
o'clock, Tuesday, January
Okay,
24th.
10 cent wings are
Awesome.
gone.
Thank you.
I
Thank
know.
you.
It works.
That
Nicole,
was an
thank you
80s
very
thing.
much again. Peter, PTSA.
Yes. Okay, at Council Rock, the hospitality team collected snacks for the December faculty meeting. Library and recycle helpers, our signups are available. We have parents coming in to help. Art room helpers, we now have time slots available Monday through Friday in the afternoons for parents to volunteer in Miss Jordan's art room and some upcoming events. Toy book drive, 1/9 through 1/20. Donate extra or unwanted toys and books for those in need in our community. Second grade movie night is on February 3rd. Movie itself will still be decided. Incoming kindergarten parent night is on the 19th. We'll be selling spiritware and introducing the PTSA to new parents. Fun Food Friday on the 20th of January, pomegranate seeds. Hospitality Snacks. Next staff meeting is on the 30th of January, and we are looking for donations. We have a dodgeball, kickball, staff versus staff in the planning phase with Jeff Green and the high school seniors, and a possible school supply kit fundraiser next September, suggested by Matt Tappan.
Is that a mashup of dodgeball and kickball, or are those two separate events?
I think it was undecided which
Correct.
they wanted to
Still in
play.
planning stages.
There's some
Comprehend that
negotiation, I
correct.
think.
Thank you.
Dodgeball, right?
Is it
Yeah, it's
dodgeball? It has been decided?
Yeah, it's dodgeball.
Okay.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
If you can dodge a wrench. Okay.
Wear
High
goggles
school.
and helmets. Good luck. Goggles.
12 Corners Middle School upcoming. We have an activity night and an 8th grade semi-formal being planned. At the high school, class of 2022 reunion was held on December 22nd at 3 p.m. in the BAHS cafeteria. We estimate that between 40 to 50 students attended. There was a good flow of students in and out throughout the event. Upcoming events, the Brighton High School PTSA meeting with the principal at noon on Thursday, January 19th, and building chairs to attend a meeting on January 10th to continue planning for Brighton Believes Day coming up in March. And that clearly already happened. And then the PTSA does have a brief statement. Our PTSA and DEI leaders, along with the executive board and building chairs, met last night to discuss the use of hate speech at TCMS. As part of our duties as BCSD PTSA leaders, we must take seriously all claims of discrimination, racism, and bias in our community. Our district is taking the matters very seriously, and we as a parent representative should also. Our goal is to continue meeting internally, but we also need to engage the Board of Education, our administrators, and principals. We're requesting time at the next board meeting to start this conversation. There we go.
Thank you. I'll speak for the board momentarily. We're all in on this work. We have a board member on each of the school-based DEI equity teams. Though the comment in the statement, Peter, was specific to TCMS, again, I'll speak for the board and tell you, there's no room for hate language in any of our schools at all. I appreciate the energy and enthusiasm that PTSA has for this and some of their work. I think that's important. We are equally engaged in this. It's contained within our blueprint as well to make sure it's a constant focus point. But we're all in, and all of the activities we can take on to eradicate this, I think we'll sign up for. I know that you have an upcoming meeting with the head of the PTSA. I'll give you a chance to elaborate as well.
Yeah, I think you said it really, really well. I mean, there's no space for this at all. There's never been space for it, but it clearly is absolutely an issue and a problem, and nobody should be ever subjected to any hate speech of any kind. And so this needs to be an important part of our work going forward. I don't think we do enough in that area, specific to hate speech. I don't think that kids necessarily get as much explicit instruction as they possibly could, because I think that while we have so many different DEI efforts happening in different places, that specific instruction on particular language hasn't necessarily been a focus. It is a focus when it comes up. It is absolutely something that's not tolerated. It's directly addressed by staff members, but it certainly seems like we have more work to do in the area of how do you explicitly teach about that. And in terms of engagement and additional conversations, we are in the process of trying to schedule some different meetings and gather more feedback on that and good approaches going forward. And I'll look forward to meeting with Robin Samper and the PTSA to talk more about how to do that productively too. So we're all in.
I believe you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, it's approval for supplies for the school district. I'll read each of them and then ask for a motion to approve. First, approval of cooperative bid for equipment repair and maintenance. Second, approval of cooperative bid for custodial supplies. Next, approval for cooperative health and safety supply bid. And then finally, approval for cooperative medical trainer supply bid. If you had a chance to look at those, any questions or comments? Motion to approve the bids as a package.
So moved.
Moved by Karen,
Second.
seconded by Eleanor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next up is the approval of an intermunicipal lease. Lou, do you want to quickly explain that?
Sure. BOCES Health and Safety used to rent space from us at Brookside. And that's a valuable service that we participate in. We have a room upstairs where Dawn Howe and her team was able to kind of transfer their supplies and equipment. They can use our conference space here. It's professional development opportunities that we benefit from a lot. So it's just a formal lease agreement to allow them to use our space upstairs.
Perfect. Thank you, I appreciate that. Any questions in regards to that lease? Motion to approve?
So moved?
Moved by Susan,
Second.
seconded by Julian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's no reason, Christina's got to go to a concert for her son Oscar, so we're going to let her go and get to that concert. We approve of musical activities here. Next up, approval of the second read policies. We've had a chance to do a first read and review and discuss these, obviously. I will read each of them with their number and then ask if there are any questions or comments. First, policy 8110, instruction, curriculum development, resources, and evaluation. Next, policy 8320, instruction, textbooks, library materials, and other instruction materials. And third, policy 8330, instruction, objection to instructional materials and controversial issues. We've had a chance to talk about these at the board, and we've had a chance at a first read. Are there any other questions in regards to these policies? I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Eleanor,
Second.
seconded by Julene. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next up, Lou, I'm going to put you through your paces again. Approval of a single audit report. Is there anything you want to say about this?
So this is the independent audit report of our single audit, which is how we use all federal funds. So I'm pleased with the report. It shows that we have a strong internal control environment over how we manage and how we utilize federal funds. Not much more to say beyond that.
We made excellent and appropriate use of the federal funds is basically
Yes, sir.
what it said. Yeah, thank you.
Better said than I did.
Questions for Lou?
No.
Motion to approve the single audit report.
So moved.
Moved by Karen,
Second?
second by Susan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next up, we have the consent agenda. It includes personnel changes and recommendations from the Committee on Special Ed and the Committee on Preschool Special Education. There's also 4 fundraising activities, just great eating opportunities here and an opportunity to get your car washed a little bit later in the year. Any questions in regards to these fundraising activities? Motion to approve.
So moved?
Moved by Susan,
Second.
seconded by Julene. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any other comments?
None at all?
Then I would make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.